the Janitor Omnibus. Integral, no sé, I don't know how to pronounce in French. Integral in Spanish. It is a comic, French comic for the French market. This is the Spanish edition. It collects the whole series. The series was 5 albums, 46 pages, and the first two, and then I don't know, like 46 again, 50 something, 70 pages. It is drawn, and the main interest I have in this was because it was drawn by François Boucq. François Boucq, I think in the US, it is known because of Bouncer with Alejandro Jodorowsky. Awesome work, that one. Also, Moonface with Jodorowsky is published in English. And The Magician's Wife, I think it is also published there in the US. And Billy Bad KGB, Little Tulip. Well, I haven't read Moonface or Billy Bad KGB, but The Magician's Wife, Little Tulip, Bouncer are great works. If you like, I mean, from the art point of view. The Magician's Wife being and Bouncer the best ones from the ones I've read. So that's the main appeal this has for me. Yves Sente is they say he's a good writer, but well, we'll see. He has done a lot of work also in France, like he replaced Benham on 13 and Thorwell. So, sure, he has made, I think, other comics about spies. This comic is a spy comic, basically. Like a James Bond, but he works for the Vatican. And the premise is like he's an agent of them. He does works for them. And on the first album, we see that it's basically an introductory album. Oh, here we have the dates. Like when they were originally published. The first two were on the same year, 2007, and the other ones 2 years later, 6 years later. For me, that's a lot, really, and that made me think that maybe the first two were like a movie or like a presentation arc, and then the other three were like self-contained stories, repeating the same main character. But no, it is just one whole story, one whole big mystery. So that should have been a drag for the readers at the time. This edition is from 2018, I think. So the first sequence is basically a mission he's doing. He's called Vince. He does a mission for the Vatican, for the church, for Christianity. And there's action, that kind of stuff. All is narrated by him because he's confessing on the present time. This is the past. And the weird element is this little girl in the yellow dress that appears out of nowhere and saves him. And he has sex, so maybe he's not really a priest. And then he's confessing, and then we get scenes introducing like other mysteries. And then he gets promoted to janitor. And then we have this also we have this strong woman journalist, it seems. a lot of text when they are explaining to him like what does a janitor, what the janitor does, that kind of stuff. They give him the mission, and he will go out on the mission, and that's where this ends. Is basically like introduction. You know, originally paying for this album should have been like really a drag. You know, like what the fuck. This was just all introduction. But sure, maybe they are accustomed to that. So the esoteric aspect of this, because on the back says, and there's it's a realistic esoteric thriller. The esoteric aspect of this is this girl like seems like a ghost. We get introduction to this nun who is like his aunt, and then he goes on this mission where you know they are meeting a lot of rich people. They are gathering about something on the snow, and there's a trick. Someone wants to steal from them money. I will not really spoil, but again, François Boucq, cool action. But for me, there are too many panels on each page. I don't really remember if Bouncer or the Magician's Wife was like this, like so many panels. But I think, and especially with the amount of dialogue, it gets boring, you know, because also François Boucq doesn't really have a lot to play with when I'm talking about the drawings. They are all just vehicles, nature, but really small panels because there are too many. So that's the writer's fault, basically. Also, they tend to explain things things that we already know. So why do that? Maybe it's a spy genre thing to do, and maybe I'm the one who doesn't really like this kind of genre that much, at least in comics. Maybe. The second story, the second album, introduces us to the almost final boss, and they escape, but it gets resolved like who is a traitor on the church, on the Vatican, you know. And also his aunt ends up in a coma and gets revealed in a way who the little girl was. And then I felt that there was not really that much any mysteries, but there are, and we get explained like his, a lot of text, and it's not really interesting text, at least for me. It's not really life-changing. So when I read this, and I read like the first two albums in one sitting, because one was just like introduction, but after that I read like one album per day, because if not, it's too much, at least for me, and too processed. So yeah, I don't really want to spoil, but on the third album we get flashbacks to Bean's past, and we get explained things like how did he get involved in the church, and then he has a mission also on this album, and there's like a reveal that he has a twin brother maybe, and the villains know this little girl, and that's where it ends, like almost on the last page it's like what, and it ends. So like I want to read the other part soon, not 2 years later. So basically, the mystery continues, and what we have is like on every album we get introduced to new characters. Sometimes they last just for one album. On this um, in this case, these characters who appear in the cover are Nazi hunters. These characters, they are Nazi hunters, and they go and find some old Nazis and kill them. You know, and that's like another plot and it's introduced, but it's not really that important. We get a lot of the past, flashbacks. That's like the main mystery, really, like what really happened with these brothers. And sure, again, we on the fourth album we have like a lot of the flashbacks, and in the end we have the final album, and again, with drawings, not that many panels, not that many text, and it changes, but that's not really often in this series. And I will not spoil it, but everything gets resolved and revealed and all that. So, did I end up liking this? At first, yeah, sure, I said why not to try this because I like the artist, but if you like this artist, I think you better get The Magician's Wife or Bouncer. They are excellent on that department. Maybe Moonface. I have not read Moonface, but I have flipping through it, and also the first albums are like crazy, and then the drawings. On this one book François Boucq doesn't really have a lot of to play with, so it's pretty much like a classic paneling standard for me. The things that happen, the morality of the characters, it's pretty black and white for me at least. You know, the church is always the good one. They don't really have like grace in them, and that was like not really that interesting. Or also the janitors, there are 12 of them, but they don't know who is a janitor, so they never meet another janitor. We always follow means, so in the end feels like it feels like all the setting, all the premise, like spies working for the Vatican, gets thrown away, and it's basically just knowing Beans. Beans, the main character, all goes around him, and the church itself is not really that important. So, in the end, all that the aspects that are of the premise that are interesting are thrown away and are not the main thing, and the main thing is just something typical, or maybe not typical, but not really that interesting or transcending. And of course, the personalities, the ideas don't really care. I don't really care that much. But on this one, there was like a good idea to explore, and all the agents, all the janitors. But no one appears here, and just means. And there was a lot of ground that could have been explored really on these pages, and they focused like 5 albums on one mystery that was not really that interesting, and also gets really resolved in a boring way, like just on the last 3 pages he gets a letter. He reads the letter, and the letter like explains all. And I don't know, for me it wasn't really that anticlimactic. And when I finished this was like, and that's it, because it was a lot of pages, like a lot of hours reading this, and it was disappointing. It was disappointing on the script. It was disappointing on the development of the premise, the interesting premise. And again, as a François Boucq fan, the coloring, the paneling, and so many panels, and so much dialogue, it's not really worth it. And there are cool sequences, but if you haven't read Bouncer, get Bouncer. If you haven't read The Magician's Wife, get that first. No, don't look up for this unless you are a fan of François Boucq or unless you like spy comics, because either way, it will not be worth it, I think. So for me, that's it with The Janitor. A disappointing read, or not really disappointing, but I have been reading stuff that I really like, and this one was not one of them. So I wouldn't recommend it.